Okay, time for something current. And here's hoping that Sanrio appreciates my video on their hot new commodity and doesn't try to claim it or anything. But first, if I could quote Tom DeLonge, punk rock musician and UFO enthusiast, yes really, work sucks. I know. I've never worked in a corporate or office environment per se. The closest thing to that was my internship, but I definitely hated some of the jobs I have had in the past. Most of them were fast food or customer service of some variety, and there's a piece of wisdom I see floating around that teenagers need these terrible, soul-crushing service jobs just to scare them into getting college and better careers. Except that a college degree doesn't automatically grant you a career path. Trust me, I know, it took about a year or so. The anime I will be reviewing has more to do with Japanese work culture rather than the US variety, and it also features cute animal characters and one of them sings death metal. But how relatable is it to a non-Japanese audience? What light does it cast on work culture over in Japan? And ultimately, you might be surprised by this, but this was made by the same company that made the Hello Kitty and its many iterations, along with other cute anime series like Jewel Pets, Onagai My Melody, and oh yeah, Ringing Bell. Remember that depressing story? Seems like aggressive Retsuko, Aggretsuko for short, isn't the only series that has a more cynical tone to it. Now, Aggretsuko actually started as a series of short animations on Japanese television, like a minute and a half long or so per episode, and subsequently, outside of Japan, you can only find these on YouTube, I think. But because this is the Hello Kitty company, they made sure to market and sell Aggretsuko like the adorable ball of inner anger that she is. I can't help but love a series about a 25-year-old single businesswoman going about through workforce hell. Her high hopes after university are crushed after working for 5 years as an accountant and having to deal with an assortment of coworker stereotypes. The gossip monger, the one that pushes all of their work onto you, couldn't really find a catchy phrase for that, they don't deserve it. The awful boss, the suck-ups towards the awful boss, you get the picture. Unfortunately, Retsuko, our main protagonist, is a doormat and takes all this abuse from her workspace. But what comes in usually comes back out in strategic and unique ways. The coworkers she hates the least and tolerates the most therein are a fennec fox who has a tendency of stalking people on social media and acting rather dry and cynical, and apparently every furry's favorite hyena right now for some reason, Haida. I mean, he's a nice guy and all, but wow, does he have a fan base. There's a bit of a South Park-esque vibe I'm getting from the art style, where it looks like something that was made very crudely. That might be too strong of a word, but you know what I mean. Very simplistic and more infantilized in this case. In Adobe Animate, sadly they don't call it Adobe Flash animation anymore, but in such a way that that's kind of part of the joke. Like the cutesy corny children's program aesthetic, coupled by the fact that this is made by Sanrio, the Hello Kitty company, is juxtaposed by the very biting jokes and commentary on women in office work environments, and also the death metal bits. What I think is interesting is that there's still some very distinctly Japanese aspects to this. It's anime, duh, but hear me out. It's not just that we have a red panda as a main character, but there are situations that are actually more common in Japan than other places in the world. One that immediately comes to mind is the whole wedding gift debacle, where she gives a newlywed wedding couple with money in a specific little decorative envelope. In any other culture, of course it might be normal to give gifts at a wedding, but this is a Japanese anime, so Retsuko gives the couple goshugi, which is Japanese for gift money, shugi bukuro, which is the Japanese traditional wedding gift envelope thing that you put the goshugi in. Another would be the suggestion to go out and drink alcoholic drinks with your coworkers or your boss. This might be more like a fun and casual thing in Western culture. I mean, I've never done it, but Japanese business culture almost requires that you do this kind of activity. Not just social drinking either, but falling flat on your face drunk. It has something to do with letting your hair down in a society based around order, avoiding open conflict, all of that. Despite these cultural quirks, you still have a series that's recognizable and sympathetic towards Western audiences from what I gathered, possibly because this 10-episode series was made just for Netflix. It's a smart move by Sanrio, honestly, because the West loves anime. Maybe not as much as other Southeast Asian countries, but just enough to get some good revenue money from. Other than that, we have some good character development and dynamics, even from some you might end up hating at first, more on that later. You have a nice music bed that switches from the cutesy and anime-ish to, of course, hardcore death metal. And again, the animation is unique in that it's nearly minimal and overly cutesy like a toddler's cartoon, but coupled with some amazing visuals to show the anime's pessimistic and bombastic side.
But if you think about it, work's no walk in the park for guys either. It can be tough for those of us who refuse to kiss up.
You kiss up all damn day.
What? It's not my fault the boss is like me.
And now we're leading into spoiler territory, and you can skip to this section here on the timeline to avoid being spoiled. There is a lot of things that I didn't expect watching this series, mainly the other red panda that Retsuko hopelessly falls for, who also has two completely different nicknames depending on if you watch the show with subtitles, Out-of-Pocket Prince, or the English dub, Space Cadet. I like the dub's nickname better, that's just me. Now the way their relationship starts is absolutely precious, but then we see it devolve into actual physical pain for Retsuko. Just from watching this series, I always have this little question in the back of my head, this little insight of how is this gonna go wrong whenever something good happens to poor Retsuko. Right during episodes 2 and 3, when the imported goods storefront idea dropped the ball, I knew this would be a cycle in this series because that's usually like that in a dark comedy with sympathetic characters. The little detail that Space Cadet's off in the distant stare turns into this stylized and handsome face, at least for Retsuko, is kind of like this little psychological effect that people have whenever they fall for someone's personality or humor, and then more than likely the physical affection for them suddenly adds on to that. It could just mean that she put a mask on him to hide his flaws as well, and not like physical flaws, but personality flaws. But I see it as both of these things. The fact that he's a hidden botanist as well was an interesting twist, and once I saw it, I immediately knew that was something he would like. Kind of glad it took this direction as well, depressing as it is, since there is a trope in media, mainly in sitcoms and other comedies, or just shows that have romance in it, where you have an odd couple that loves each other despite their flaws or hilariously dramatic squabbles, and sometimes they just end up hating each other at first and then falling in love later on, because that's totally how that happens in real life. But in this case, it just didn't work between Retsuko and Space Cadet. That is realistic. But it's also best for Retsuko since she nearly lost her fighting spirit against her crappy job over some guy with a milquetoast personality, and I don't think their relationship was moving forward at all anytime soon. I mean, that was one of the reasons that she wanted to get out of this job in the first place. It's to marry some rich guy.
In other words, you get a sculpted yoga body, land a boyfriend who makes good money, marry him a year or two from now, quit your office job ASAP, and live happily ever after. Roll credits.
I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds kinda...
Oh, Retsuko.
Ultimately, it isn't so much that the show wanted Retsuko to be miserable and never succeed, but it kind of beats her down just to show that she should never settle and always look for what's best for her. And speaking of what's best for her, I know everyone wants a piece of Haida, but I personally ship Retsuko with Haida, and there's nothing you can say that proves this isn't best ship OTP. The fact that he had this nice little crush on her that wasn't constantly dragged out throughout the series is great. But then eventually he actually gets to confess his feelings. Right at the end, we never hear it, but it's implied. And when it probably mattered the most, it had the right amount of build-up for this series. It's great. I would say he's the only good guy that Retsuko knows, but that means her other male coworkers are either pretty neutral or complete sacks of manure, like Tan. who goes from a terrible chauvinist pig, literally, that's the joke, to someone that was molded and expected to act like a chauvinist pig, because that's how the workforce culture was when he first got there. It's nice having blatantly awful characters giving actual human qualities like that. And of course, during the office karaoke party and drinking party, he would pick a rap song that This Is Retsuko after finding out she was involved with ratting him out to the spineless CEO, who didn't fire him, but simply told him, tone down the misogyny and yelling down at people, please. Now, I mean, rap and hip-hop does have this connotation that it's male-dominant, but then again, death metal does that too, but in a less self-fulfilling way. And to close this out, I wonder how long it'll take for Fernando or Haida to figure out Retsuko's secret hobby of death metal karaoke. There is always the next season. I really hope there is one. Spoilers over. Overall, I think it would not be wise if Sanrio stopped this series at just one season. There will be hellfire. Not from me, I'm not that kind of person. Actually, I'm not even a person, I'm a reindeer. Whatever. The show isn't perfect. I mean, I know I talk a lot up about it, but that's just because it's a damn good series that has a lot going for it. It's basically if Dilbert was actually funny, or if Office Space got a coating of cuteness painted all over it. And my only critique is I wish there were more episodes. But now comes the more important question. How furry is it? Let's examine this sad little red panda tale using my C.H.A.N.C.E system, a handy rubric I use to break down furry aspects in media, those being cast, harmony, anthropocentrism, narrative, commonality, and expression. Let's start with cast, or how many narratively important characters that are furry. We have Retsuko, a red panda, Fernando, a fennec fox, Haida, spotted hyena, Ton, the pig, and Gori and Washimi, a gorilla and messenger bird. We have another case of no human characters at all in this series, just anthro-animals. Now, side note, I gotta mention this, you might recognize Retsuko's English voice actor, Erica Mendez, who has been in quite a selection of anime and video games. She's Arl in Puyo Puyo Tetris, Ryoko from Kill la Kill, Akko from Little Witch Academia, and Nico Nico Ni from Love Live. I promise I'll never do that again. Fernando's voice actor, Caitlin Galt, was also in Little Witch Academia as one of the old professor ladies, Professor Babcock. But then you have the innocent Ben Deskin, who just found out about the furry fandom at the release of this series. He has quite the portfolio. He was Eugene from Hey Arnold. He's Joseph Joestar, number 1 and number 2 from Codename K&D, and that goddamn betrayer Eric from Tony Hawk's Underground series. I also want to mention that they got the voice actor of Roadhog from Overwatch to play Ton, which really adds to his pig character. Back on topic, we have a whole cast of furry characters for the narratively important main characters, which means a 4 out of 4. Next is harmony, or how natural these furries are to the setting. While these animals don't naturally live all in modern-day Japanese cities, let alone the country of Japan outside of zoos, this anime setting makes these anthros appear natural. Again, because no human characters at all. There isn't a moment where a character questions why one species exists in this realm, more so they're more concerned with what they do for the company. Now, if they did add humans into the world of Aggretsuko, it wouldn't make the anthros in this setting less unnatural unless somehow it turns out anthros are a minority, as is the case in some media, but I don't see that happening in this anime, so we'll just settle with a 4 out of 4 in terms of harmony. Moving on to anthropocentrism, or how close these anthros are to being human. It would be pretty bizarre, I suppose, to have these furries act anything less than human. The main focus of this series is to exemplify the issues working within the office jobs in Japan, and subsequently other countries. So throwing in exceptional animal behavior might come across as really weird. Some other shows can get away with it, but I don't think it worked for Aggretsuko. The show is more than comfortable having the characters act as professional business workers in varying degrees of that qualifier, rather than a bunch of predators and prey in a zoo, even if metaphorically the predator species sometimes seek out the prey in this office environment. With characters being essentially humans in animal skin, in terms of behavior and mannerisms, we have another 4 out of 4. And next is narrative, or how important these furries' animal nature is to the narrative. Now we have a red panda, fennec, fox, hyena, and pig all in the same series of events and plot threads, but their animal nature is honestly more symbolic of their personality and attitudes rather than something that ties them to the narrative. Retsuko is a red panda because she was born that way, but she's also timid and cute outside of the death metal breakdowns, but her red panda-ness isn't integral to the overall plot. There isn't literal species drama that defines the plot, but there might be some elements of power dynamics between her and some predator anthros, like this reptilian right here. Her main antagonist is a pig, which is not even a predatory species at all. Side note, pigs are actually supposed to be really intelligent creatures, relatively speaking, and the only reason they get this dirty, nasty stigma to them is probably because they just like rolling around in mud and pig pens, because that's where we put them on the farm, for the most part. I mean, they're descendants from wild boars, which are the predatory species, more or less. So you can pile that symbolism onto Tan's character. Now, while this symbolism does tie these anthros to their animal selves, it's not too integral to the plot, but I wouldn't say it's completely unnoticed. That is, they don't discuss their animal nature, but the symbolism of it all leads me to a 2.5 out of 4. Then we have commonality, or how prevalent anthros are outside of the main cast. As you can tell, just like our main cast, everyone else is some form of walking and talking animal character. We aren't limiting ourselves to just mammals and domestic species either, which, you know, that's a plus for me, though I only spotted 1 deer out of the whole series so far. Here's hoping they add more. I'm not biased, I'm, just saying. But yeah, unlike other media, this series went out of its way to find the right animal species to represent these characters' personalities or role within the story, like the gorilla and secretary bird, which you're more likely to find in the African continent. You don't see a lot of secretary birds in media, that's all I'm saying. There aren't any repeated species outside of Space Cadet and Retsuko, so they have that diversity angle along their belt as well. And overall, a nice variety of side and background characters that are all anthro and non-human, which means a solid 4 out of 4. Finally, we have expression, or how furry they actually look. I mentioned the human behaviors before, but now it's time to focus on what animal features they still retain. They have a standard bipedal body with fur, feathers, scales, etc. appropriate to their species. We also have tails, head shapes, and facial features, while stylized that match their species, like snouts and muzzles and beaks. And the eyes, I know I talk a lot about characters' eyes, but they for the most part match their chosen species as well. You have these small little cute black circles for Retsuko and Fernando, which look similar to how they would be for the real-life animal species. But then you have characters with closed or slanted lines for eyes, or just regular anime eyes, especially with Haida. With this in mind, I'd call this all distinctly animalistic in appearance, but still stylized and anthropomorphic enough to be humanoid, which brings this to a 2.5 out of 4. After a tally of each score, we have a total of 21 out of 24. If nothing else grabs you to start watching shows on Netflix at this point, I'd have to first ask what's wrong with you, because they also have BoJack and My Little Pony for Pete's sake, and other great series with anthropomorphic animal characters, but maybe Aggretsuko will change you from your Neanderthalic ways. The people I have showed this series to say that they personally feel called out or attacked by the series through its situations that depict a good-natured worker beaten down by the workplace, and don't worry, everyone feels that way when they watch this series, apparently. And maybe you're the terrible boss or the desperate doormat or some other stereotype in this anime. So that's something you can relate to. Now, if you don't like dark humor that beats down on its main characters and just want a happy ending and some cute girls to look at or something, I don't know if this is for you. Maybe you want something more lighthearted like all the other series that Sanrio makes for the most part. Whatever the case, if you do like the dark humor and biting commentary, you owe it to yourself to delve into this series.
My days of being a doormat are over. bared her fangs, went for the kill, and I shut that crap down!
This has been Gregor, Reindeer, with How Furry Is It? Click on the like button if you enjoyed what you saw, and subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to see more anthro analysis and antler antics. And since you're still here, go ahead and check out my Patreon page. Patreon lets you pay creators like me directly through a monthly paid subscription, and if you're generous enough, you can even have your name in the credits before each review, or help me co-produce a review. I also have a special Discord server for my patrons, but you can also send me single donations through Ko-fi, that's Ko-Fi, and as always, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.